Good afternoon, small business owners and other curious humans. Today, we're looking at presentations that clients will absolutely love. My name's Dante and James from Business Station. I'm here to help guide you through the world of presentations using a few different tools. We're going to look at PowerPoint from Microsoft. We're going to look at Slides from Google, and then finally Canva, which is what I do all of my presentations on. So let's share this screen and get you underway. Just got to find the little controls here. Sometimes it's not as easy to find as we think. And there we are. Lovely photo of me crossing my arms. Notice how those arms are strategically positioned to cover my belly. What we're going to look at today is the sorts of presentations you're likely to do as a business owner. We're going to look at the structure of these different types of presentations that you may come up against. And then we're going to look at the style and finally look at the systems as well. So there's the sorts of them, the structure of them, the style we're going to look at, some extra tips that I throw in there myself because they're absolute rules that I live by when it comes to presentations. After all, I'm doing probably about 300 of them a year at this stage. And then finally looking at the systems and how you'll actually apply some of those principles we'll learn along the way to those different systems. So whether you're using PowerPoint, Google Sheets, or Canva, you'll have a chance to see something that looks familiar to you. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Digital Solutions Program delivered by the Australian Government as part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services. This is being recorded and put into YouTube as well. So if you're saying, if you're getting this on YouTube right now, g'day, hope you're enjoying it. You probably can't talk live because you're on YouTube. So put your comments down below, and a really, really good opportunity that if you're on the call right now on Zoom, please do interact and give me a question if you've got one or some feedback if you've got any. My background is with Meta as a lead trainer. I'm doing lots of presentations with them, usually in PowerPoint. When it comes to Business Nation and Workforce Australia, most of my presentations are done in Canva. But with the Be Connected program and the digital springboard programs that I deliver as well, they are both done in Microsoft PowerPoint. So it's a little bit of a mix. In Google Sheets is what I should have been saying. There's lots of different ways that these things are presented, and you'll come across lots of different tools yourself. Now, you may be familiar with one or all of them, but what we're going to look at before we look at systems is have a look at the kinds of presentations that you're likely to come across in your work as a small business owner. The first lot is what I call pitches and proposals. Then there's training presentations or how-tos, and then performance reports. Let's break those down a little bit because those terms might not seem quite right to you. So for pitches and proposals, you're talking about product and service proposals. So for instance, you're pitching for work and you're putting out a quote, for instance. Before you do a quote, you'll often do a proposal. And the proposal is a more visual explanation of the kind of work you're looking to carry out. Now, this can be in the form of a quote as well. Although today's quotes tend to be like click to accept kind of quotes where they're a lot more interactive, whereas yesterday's quotes tended to be just sheets of numbers that didn't really have much of an explanation of what the work was that was involved. Let's just say, for instance, you are a web developer. You're making websites for people. So you want to give some sort of mock-up of what that website may look like. It's probably also very helpful if you're able to explain some of the things you're doing, the technology you're using, in order to make sure you're understood by the client. Then there's pitches for new business. And those pitches are a little bit different. So they're like saying that I've got a different way of thinking. This is something which is very new. And I'm pitching for business, not as a response. So sometimes the response for new business comes from like a proposal. It's a response to someone saying, I would like to get a quote from you. But a pitch for new business tends to be unsolicited. It's coming from you and it's approaching people who otherwise hadn't approached you first. So those are a very different kind of process as well. They might be a little bit more heavy on the information about you, introducing you, producing examples of your past work rather than just simply painting a picture of, okay, this is who I am, what I do, here's the quote. Pitches for new investment are a whole other beast. So for instance, if you're looking for people to come on board and partner with you in your business, if you're looking for people to provide money as an input to what you're doing in your business, well, then that's where a pitch for investment may come from. And there's a very defined way of pitching for investors that comes out of the Silicon Valley model of finding those things. And it's very simple, very easy to read, very easy to take in. And then you may find you have to provide more detail for that pitch at a later date. So that's looking at the pitches and proposals. Now we're looking at the training style presentations, the how to use your product, how to complete a task, how to do a thing, how to do something. They're the ones that I do a lot of. This one today is a perfect example of that. It's an example of one of these when you have like a training or a class or some kind of presentation where you're showing people how to do something, or taking them through a concept or some kind of idea that they otherwise haven't worked on before. So that's how we do training presentations. And the final one being the performance reports. Let's go back to, so that could be like a website performance report, like analytics, for instance, is a form of report that you can take all those numbers and figures out and turn them into something a little bit more readable for a client. There's also social media reports measuring, you know, how many views there were on posts, how many people are following you, and in a graphical format. And I've got an example of one of these later on. There's also then leads and sales reports. So this is on how things are going in your business. So you're reporting, say, to an investor or to a chairperson, where you're saying, okay, here's who our new members are, here's how much money we've made, here's the amount of new sales we've made. It's very much numbers oriented, but dressed in a way that's very easy for those who don't have a lot of time to be able to understand. And then finally is the results and outcomes style of presentation. So these kind of presentations are all about results and outcomes, obviously, but what they're really trying to get across is the same as those leads and sales reports. Really, sometimes outcomes and results can be very complicated, but they need to be tied back to, say, what the original aims of a certain activity might have been. Let's just say, for instance, that you're looking to attract 1,500 people to an event, and this results in outcome report may be going, okay, we attracted 1,225 people. Here's the kind of people that did show up. And here's the reason why we believe that we didn't quite get to our 1,500 target and what the repercussions of that may be. So these are all designed to make sometimes complex information very simple to present. So what we're going to cover today is 3 specific styles of those 3 specific types. And we're going to look at the service proposal. So we're going to put in a proposal to someone as a response for them asking for a quote. We're going to look at the how-to. We're going to do a how-to thing of how to do a certain thing. In this case, it's how to be more productive. It's a fictional kind of presentation. And we're going to look at an example of this results and outcomes, like a report. And it's going to be a report, a fictional social media report. So the structures of these presentations then have to be taken quite seriously, because if you don't have the right structure, people may not be able to follow it along. And if you don't have the right structure for each of these kinds of presentations, then they don't make sense to the person who may be reading it. It may jump around in a very weird way. There's a certain sequence that people understand when it comes to all 3 of those types. So in the case of a service proposal, when you're trying to put together a quote for someone that's not necessarily in a quoting system, you would lead with the brief. And the brief is the information that the client has provided to you. So for example, and the one we're going to use is going to be a brief for I can't remember what the brief is. Actually, it's for a marketing proposal for a cafe. So with that brief, it's taking all the information that the client has provided to, which is all about what they need, what their outcomes are, what their concerns and issues are when it comes to their marketing. And then you present a solution to that brief. So they provided you all the things that, let's just say, what their problems are. You then provide a solution and a price to provide an answer to those issues. And then we look at explaining who you are at the end of it. So at the end of it, what you want to do is make sure that they know who you are, the team that's working on these things. Also, if there's any outsourcing to be done, this is a very important thing to do. So an example of one of these marketing proposals looks a little bit like this from this fictional company, Oddball Labs. And it's for the Winslow Cafe, presented by Mark Hall, the marketing head of Oddball Labs. So let's see how this looks once we get into it. We'll start off with, now, the problem statement is a really clear statement that says, this is the problem that represents the reason why the client came to us in the first place. The Winslow Cafe needs to focus its efforts on establishing its online presence to increase its sales. So the big problem we need to have is they don't have a focused online presence, and that's leading to a potential loss in sales, and they want to increase their sales. So we know that this proposal is all about that. The solution as presented by Oddball Labs is to get a digital marketing strategy using paid influencers, paid social media ads interesting social media content and search engine traffic driven from Google. So they've said, okay, we know what the problem is. Here is our proposed solution for it. Straight away, in just 2 pages in, we've got the solution. That's great. That means the client is not having to waste a lot of time just going through all this guff to get to what the solution is going to be. And the next thing is that it starts to then explain what the strategies are. So once you've got the solution, you've got the problem stated, you've got the solution stated, now we go and we start to explain more about that solution, break it down into how it's going to be, and also how it's going to be measured. In this case, they're looking at like the trends are, along with monthly research and analytics reports as well. So they're providing a little bit more detail on what each thing would be. So the success indicators, they're saying how to measure that we're doing the right thing is that you'll look at an increase in foot traffic, not just by the activity of doing things on social media, but it leads to an increase in your cafe. So that's really important to put out there, as is the timeline. You want to be able to tell people when that thing will be delivered, when it's expected to start, especially in these sort of programs where it's done outside of a usual that you're not building a physical product, for instance. Sometimes online projects can drag on a little bit. So this is very important to get nailed down, that you're saying, okay, it's going to begin no more than 14 days after the agreement's been signed, which then leaves it in their court to sign it as soon as possible, because you're suggesting then the start date is January 15 with a go live of their marketing on February 1. So a 15-day turnaround to get that live marketing happening. So that way everybody knows what the aims are, and the expectation is that, you know, if you take longer to pay this invoice and agree to this agreement, then it's going to take longer to get this started. Next up is the money. So this I like to usually bring a little bit further to the front, because I want people to know up front what they're looking at, so they can very quickly go yes or no. I know there's a lot of sales psychology that seems to indicate, no, baffle them with all your BS first and give them all the guff and the fluff so they'll feel wonderful by the time they hit the price. For me, I know personally, I want to know the price up front as soon as possible before all the guff. So whilst I would usually put this right up to the beginning, so they can very quickly make an assessment whether they want to use me or not based on price, because let's face it, most of these things are going to happen based on price, not just on the quality of your service. Then they, in this particular layout, they really want to do this a little bit later in it, once they've explained what you're going to get before they give the price. That's a usual thing. I like to go, here's the price, here's what you're going to get, as a way of just basically, I like to disqualify people who if they're going to look at that price and be totally turned off by it, I want to get out. Like, I don't want to waste any time on them, so that they can move as quickly based upon that decision. And then another important part of a proposal is the next steps. What do you do next? And that must be to discuss it with us, finalize and sign the contract, and submit an initial payment of 50%. So that's where they're saying in this example of this fictitious one that, yeah, it may also require an initial payment of 50%, which will then be invoiced later. So it's very, very clear. I'll just quickly run through that again. We start off with the statement of the problem that the client's having, the solution that's proposed. We break down that solution a bit into what it's going to involve, and then how we're going to measure that we're actually doing the right thing. Finally, getting to a price and a timeline. And when we got to the price and the shock is over and the earthquake has stopped, then we go into what they need to do next and how they will continue to work with us. I then also like to end with an introduction to the team. So in this case, they've got their fictitious team of their social media managers, community managers, and content creators, and analytics managers of all the sort of things they do. Here's the people you're going to be working with. I also like to have a photo of those people usually. For instance, when I'm doing government grant projects for clients in the Northern Territory, one of the things that needs to be stated is who that person's going to be working with, who's going to be carrying out the work. So that's something that always needs to be included. So you can find that's very common amongst grants and tenders as well, just to ensure that if there's something which has a requirement where there's local content, for instance, where you are stating that you're using local people to do that work, and then you turn out that you don't use local people and you outsource it, that's where they're trying to sort of make sure you're doing the right thing. I like to put this at the end. A lot of places like to do that at the beginning. They like to explain, all about them up front. I'm like, that's fluff and guff, and I like to get like right to the end. That's the stuff where, I'm assuming they probably already know most of that stuff. but it's nice to have it at the end, not really leading up front with it. After all, the client's really just concerned with what am I going to get and what's it going to cost? Who's doing it and all that? That's fluff, and that can be at the end. So the next style, which is the how-to style, is having one very clear topic. And this is so important when you're going into presentations trying to teach people. Have a very clear topic at the very beginning of this particular video or this particular webinar. Is I stated straight up that this is about presentation skills, that presentations that clients will love. So I'm not talking about you doing presentations for university. I'm not talking about you doing presentations for a PhD. I'm talking about you doing presentations that are good for your clients. So having that one clear topic when you're going into a class scenario means that everyone has an expectation of what they're going to learn. I then like to cover no more than 3 main areas of education in each presentation. The shorter the presentation, the easier that is to abide by. Sometimes you're going to go over a little bit. I've got sort of 3 main areas I'm covering in this one. That was in the initial slide where I said, this is what we're going to cover today. But you may find there's a couple of other things that have to sneak in there as well. The reality is I've actually got about 4 main areas I'm covering, but they can really be condensed into 3 really important areas of subject for you to learn. And I also want to make sure that I don't have any more than 3 points on every page. You know how there's you go to some presentations, you see them and they've got so much writing in very small text that you can't really read it all or understand it all. I like to make sure that, yes, there is one clear topic per presentation, but no more than 3 main areas covered through that presentation. And each slide then has no more than 3 points on it. That's a part of my rule of 3s, which I'm going to cover a little bit more later on. So an example of this kind of presentation, I've very much shortened down this particular one, is one called Become a More Productive Person. So it's got, a pretty simple outlook there. It's not really going into a lot of detail about on the front. It's just saying, here's what it's about. Become a more productive person with this particular coach. Then I have a table of contents, or what we're going to learn today, which is just 3 main points. What is productivity? Overcoming the enemies of productivity. How to be productive. 3 main areas to look at. So you've got a preview straight up front of knowing, oh, okay, if I'm watching this on YouTube, for instance, I can go, oh, okay, I need to go a bit later in it because I just want to know how to be productive. I don't need to learn all this other stuff that people can skip ahead. In a live environment like this one is on Zoom right now, on a Monday afternoon, this is where you're looking at going, well, okay, I needed to look at this as a way of understanding what's coming up really clearly. And this is where clarity is very important in any of these. It's one of the reasons why I only go for 3 points for any slide and 3 main ideas is because it's very clear to people. They can understand what they're looking forward to. The idea of 3 points on a slide. This slide is a little busier than I'd like it to be, but this example one says, well, the enemy of productivity is laziness, procrastination, and overwork. I could probably bring out the @reallyGreatSite and the reallyGreatSite.com stuff. I think when you overload your slides with lots of branding and lots of brand messages and links to things, nobody really cares about that. They're not there for that. If you can cover, for instance, most of my presentations are in a certain color palette, usually in mixes of navy blue, purple, and pink. That's my colors. They're my business color palette. In this case, I'm using someone else's palette. So you can see they're going in, greens and yellows and kind of muted colors to match against the greens. But that over like this really great site, that can probably go. We don't really need that because that comes against another one of my rules of 3 later on that you're going to see. The results and outcome style of presentation, sorry, all these P words, are things like web and social media reports, leads and sales reports, and results and outcomes. I'm going to look at this one as a particular one as a results and outcomes in the form of a social media report. So let's just say Juliana is our social media manager, and every month she presents a social media report. In this case, the December one is showing us that here's the most liked posts. So here's the 3 posts that were the most liked. So we look at those and go, okay, we get a bit of a description and go, okay, we're starting to see what these most popular posts were and see the commonality between them or anything we have to learn from them to know that these were the most popular. We can then see what the most commented posts are. See, this very, very simple, just one idea per page, most liked, most commented, And that's pretty much all we need to do when we're presenting each one of those. We don't need to load up both the most liked and most commented all on one page, just one idea per page. And then maybe statistics can be laid out in a very graphical interface that allows people to easily understand them. Now, I could go that there's 111,236 followers, or I can just go there's 111,000 on there and make it really simple for people to just glance at, read and go, okay, I've got the idea. That seems to be up. So we go, that's up 23%, that's up 12%, that's up 7%, that's up 21, that's up 5. So we get a better idea of what the basic information is we need to know in a graphical layout that's easy to follow and doesn't overwhelm you. There's only a few numbers there. There's not a lot to overwhelm you. Very easy to understand what those things are, as long as you understand what follow, interaction, comment, click rate, and message mean. And you can explain those later, or do what I generally do. Put the word up there and explain it as you're talking. And that comes to your presentation skills beyond just simply making the slides, as you're able to then explain what each of those things do verbally. And that really comes from, I guess, one of the greatest ideas that I have around presentations is you're not trying to squeeze everything into the page. You don't have to explain everything on there. I know that a lot of people like to either take screenshots or take photos or basically just, instead of taking notes, they just want the slides to have all the notes for them. I like to walk away with a much more visual thing because I remember things better when I've seen them as a visual representation rather than lots and lots of words on a screen that mean nothing to me. I see words and I get a bit gobbledygook. I'm not dyslexic in any way, but it's just that I just get overwhelmed by too much information presented as text on a screen. In this case, using a chart or a graph to do this, and certain tools. I know that both PowerPoint and Sheets and also Canva allow you to produce some quite attractive looking graphs that can then present complex information in a much more simple to look at way. So we can see the glut in the middle between 18 and 44 tends to be where the vast majority of the age range of these people who are online and interacting with social media with this particular fictitious client seem to be. It's very easy to see that in that bell curve. You can also see that between 13 and 17 is where there's nothing going on. So we then know very, very quickly that people over 65 and under 18 don't tend to represent much of who is following you. But that big middle lot, particularly in the younger end up to about 35, tends to be where there's a lot of activity. So that's a look at some of those ideas and the styles that we do these in. This is a few rules I'm going to follow before we go into the actual opening up of the systems and seeing how they all work. So the rules I will follow generally around the rules of 3 for presentations. The idea there's no more than 3 main ideas per presentation. That's one we covered a little bit earlier. So having 3 main areas of learning or 3 big facts are going to be explored in that particular presentation. Secondly, no more than 3 points of information written in any one slide. I choose 3 because we have trouble remembering things over about 3. Because I remember 3 main points we'll take away. I know that for every conference I've ever gone to, whilst they might baffle me with information and just overwhelm me with statistics and knowledge, I won't generally walk away from that presentation remembering anything but 1 or 2, maybe 3 points of what I thought were the most relevant things for me. And this is why you need to keep these points really short. And you'll notice I do that on all my screens in this presentation, because once you start adding too many points, it becomes very hard to read it. And for those people who have dyslexia or those people who are of a younger demographic who have a lot of trouble reading big blocks of words, then you find that then it's easier for them to take this information in. Remembering there's 3 main ideas per presentation, 3 points per slide, and 3 visual elements per slide in a rule of 3s is a lot easier to remember than having 7 or 10 rules for slides, right? So I've got 3 3s. And the final one is that three visual elements per slide. You'll see here I've only really got 2. I've got like an image of the hand showing the 3 fingers and then the text. Although technically I can say the 3 fingers, the heading, the rule of 3s for presentations, and then the body text as well. So I've got just 3 on there. Now, some of these ones we were showing before, they have a lot more. So for instance, they've got a few more numbers on there. There's more than 3 elements on there, for example. But I like to keep mine down to just 3 elements on those slides. I think it's much easier for people to read and understand and take away some ideas. I also like to take into account, I can't always do it because of the length, is Guy Kawasaki's rules of presentation, where he says that a presentation that's given to as a pitch, for instance, for investors, should have no more than 10 slides, last no more than 20 minutes, and be presented in nothing smaller than a 30-point font. So that's the size 30 of font. So we don't want, 18s and 12s and 14s. They're not readable on screens very, very easily, and certainly not in big conferences where people might be sitting at the back. They cannot see that small text. Well, all of my text is quite large. Again, some of those example screens and slides had some smaller text in them, but it was still like, if I go back, for instance, to this, that is still like around about 35-point text. So it's not 12 or 18 or 24, it's about 35. So it is actually conforming to that. Where it might get a bit small is these numbers down here. That said, these numbers down here on a graph can be explained. So with Guy Kawasaki's one, I move on to then another rule, which is that charts and images are better for telling stories than words are. I think all of us can agree that words are overwhelming when there's too many of them on a screen, but you can then present those words as charts, as graphs, as infographics, as images. Any image or any sort of graph just condenses a lot of verbal information into a feeling and an emotion. And feelings and emotion are very, very well explained by video and images. Like the old saying says that a picture tells 1,000 words. And I say, well, then, a video will tell 1,000,000, because you'll be able to see a lot more interaction. So we can read into that photo whatever we like to, and that could be representing to me serious conversations. So we can say it's time for us to have serious conversations about behavior in the workplace. And that may need sitting down with someone to actually call them out on the behavior in a safe and non-threatening way that approaches them like a friend rather than as a combatant. Now, if I had written all those words down on there, it'd just take up most of the screen, and especially if I was following the 30-point format. For me, I prefer my words to be no smaller than 45 points. The reason for that is because I tend to do a lot of speaking in very big places. So I need a lot of scope for people to just read very, very few words in as clear writing as I possibly can, which then brings me to the choice of fonts. So in this particular one, I've got what I call a highlight font. It's only for adding a little bit of color. I don't really have a lot of messaging that comes across in that font because it's not the easiest font to read. It's just a little highlight font that I use, say, for instance, the front page, or to indicate, something that's a little bit whimsical. My heading is done in this very large, very blocky, very wide font. And then I'm using Montreal New as the body text font. So it's Libra Franklin, I think, is the very big font there. The reason why I use very, very clear, very thick, and very, very upright sans serif fonts is they are very easy for people to read, and they don't become caught up in a lot of the stylistics. So that whole idea of form over function, where there's such prettiness going on with slides, you can't really understand what they're saying. I don't want to be like that. For me, that highlight font at the top, that's enough for me to add in a little bit of color, but my main messages will never be done that font, because the main messages are way too important to be missed because someone's unable to read them. So let's take a look at the systems. We've spent a bit of time understanding how we're going to put all these together. Let's look at the system we're going to do that with. So PowerPoint is part of Microsoft 365. It's a free online version that's available. I'm going to use the online version rather than the desktop version, but you can use the desktop version as well. Very, very similar in controls to what the online version is. It is a little clunky and a little outdated, getting things like, these very smooth animations that I'm doing going from pages. All these little smooth animations are not as easy to do in something like PowerPoint. They're very easy to do in Canva, which is what I do my presentations on. The next one is a free one that comes with Gmail called Google Slides. So if you've got Gmail, you go up to the top right-hand corner, you have a little 9 dots. That's like the menu that shows you all the different tools you've got that are included with your Gmail account. So that includes Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Sheets, which forms the same kind of stuff as Office 365 has, which is the Excel spreadsheets, the PowerPoint slides, and then the Docs, which is the Microsoft Word equivalent. It is online only though, but there is a bit of a there's a way around that. For instance, I use Google Chrome as my browser. The Google Chrome browser allows you to work on something offline in Google Docs and Google Slides and all that. So you can go in there and continue to work on what projects you're working on. You need to have started them while you're online. And then you can work with them while you're offline, and it saves all that information within the browser. So when you connect again, it all syncs up and it goes online again. So that's very easy way of making sure if you're on a flight or something, you like to be able to update these things. For instance, I can't use Canva when I'm in a flight. So I'm completely, stuck not being able to do anything. But in Google Slides and the desktop version of PowerPoint, I'm able to do that on my laptop in an airplane where I don't have internet connection. And these days, so it looks like only one Australian airline, Qantas, seems to have online internet in flight. Virgin doesn't have it anymore. Jetstar's never had it. It's also lighter than PowerPoint. It tends to work a little bit quicker. It's got less confusing options, so it doesn't have quite as many options as what PowerPoint does. But then if you want to go to like the smooth, the animated, the beautiful, the minimalistic, very clear, very easy to use, then you've got Canva, which is free to start with. It gives you a limited number of templates to work with and elements to work with. Elements are things like icons, images, charts, all those sort of things. Not everything comes for free. And I'll show you when we go into Canva how you can tell what things are free and what things are not. But it is the easiest to use, despite being only be able to use online when you've got an internet connection. It is really, really simple to use. So to get all these things like animations are just like a click here and there. They don't require you to go into a lot of different details to try and do that. So let's look at, let's go back a slide and go into another screen. So the stops to sharing, I'm going to go to another version of my screen, which is going to show you how we use each of these. The first up, we're going to take a look at the online version of Microsoft PowerPoint. So let's have a look at that. So PowerPoint Online looks like this. You're going to find this looks very similar to Google Slides, and it's all about basically looking at all your performer things you've done before, and then be able to open things in a selection of themes. Now I can see more themes over here, and see I can work through a whole lot of different design themes, which I think are quite nice, and then work from there. Now the Office app, the online version, the not online version, the desktop version of PowerPoint does give you a few more options, but not really that many, to be honest. It doesn't give you a lot more. So if I was to select the theme, I go maybe the geometric color block theme, and I can start to now build this. So it's going to give me the outline of this. Now it's done. It's given me a set of slides that I may or may not want to work with. So if I'm doing my presentation on something like alternatives to youth incarceration. Problem with reports like these are usually like fraught with all kinds of they'll have like a ton of logos on them, for instance. So Miriam Nielsen is our presenter of the alternative youth incarceration one. We say, okay, what is the agenda, or what we'll learn? And then to sort of stretch things out, you sort of pull them out and they'll fit on that one line. What we will learn. Okay, let's just see those. I was going to stick with those. And then you can just change all the elements in here. The stuff you can't really change though, there's all these design elements they've got on the side, like these pink and blue and khaki colors. That's all there. Now you can look at design here and change the color palette that you're using. So if you've got a particular color palette you want to use, if you're very much in the darker colors, it'll change then the whole slideshow of this slide and all the other ones as well into this format. So it shows you a different one with different colors. So it's a little bit different. If you don't like the look of that, you can change to another one until you find one that you actually are happy with. So for instance, this one's a little bit more clear, got a darker background. Now remembering too, if you are going to use these as something you're going to print out as well later, having dark backgrounds means that you're going to use a lot more ink than what you would be if you were, say, for using this one. So we want to use this one, which is our original one. It's a little bit less heavy. Let's go back to our front page, which is now lost its because I've been fiddling. Now, this is one of the things I do not like about working with PowerPoint is I made a few changes and I thought I'd preview them. All it's done is just mess up my screen. So I need to go back and back and back and back until I find the original style I was in. So I just go Control Z until I go back to find the original format I had, which was much nicer. There we go. We finally found it. So now we've got all that together. You may want to, change some designer ideas. So for instance, this is one thing that Microsoft does very well is it gives you designer ideas. So we've got this what you'll learn page we can change by going designer, and it's going to give me some ideas for differently laying out that page. So for instance, if I wanted to lay it out in more of a block, I wanted to lay it out more like this, I could. This is like what we've got now, but it puts it on the side. We've got versions with bobbles all over the place. They've got lots of different design ideas that we can make it look a bit different. So I might take this one because that fits with the original front page a bit better. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. Now I can look at each one of these words in here and just measure what they're like. At the home position, I see that they're 24. They're too small for our rules. So we need to take those up to 30 or 32 so that things can be much more easily read. Same with Miriam's name, needs to be increased to 32 as well. I'm choosing 32 because that's one of the defaults on there. So it's going to be easier to read these things now, much, much easier when it's on a big screen in front of people. Same here, this tiny little writing in here at 15. We take it up to 32, it's going to take up a lot more space. So we may find that we need to sort of move things around in order to make everything show just right. It's much more easy to read. It may not look as minimalistic as what it did with the smaller text, but it does look a whole lot better and easier to read now. And you just continue to go on and put in place the things you want to put in place. For instance, you just keep going and saying, well, notice how it's got this two different fonts. It's got this font here as its primary font, as its heading font, and then it's got this sort of Times New Roman type of font for its secondary font, which again, too small. So you'll have to fiddle around with these to make them suit what you want them to do. You're basically looking for an opportunity to make things very readable, to get your ideas across in a much better way. Now, loading photos up to this, you can just go over to here and to the home area, and you can then go insert, and then you can either select slides or pictures. So you can get, I don't need to get it from my Android phone, but if I just go insert pictures from this device, I can then go looking for something I was working on before, which is this post on Facebook for Channel 10. And that then becomes a picture that I can make larger, be able to cover some space, put it over there, and then it's, it's part of my presentation now. Make it smaller, move it around. If I'm doing that way, I can make that look out better. Now, you can get design ideas over here. Remember that we had the designer thing before? If I go to home, get rid of this thing over here, and I had the option to look at design ideas. Now that's not there at the moment because I've moved out of that. But if I want to look at some better design ideas, I can right click, change the picture, format it differently, change the order that things are going into, or look at some more styles. So for instance, I can produce that image in a circle with an oval. So let's put it inside a circle. If I go, no, I probably don't want to do that. Control Z to go back, change it to something which is going to sit more in a 3D image like that. That can be a really cool way of doing that. These are some of the things that the PowerPoint does particularly well, both on the free version online and the paid version, which is the desktop version that runs on your own computer. So it does do some very cool things with these. I will give them that. They have some very cool layout ideas. Canva does much of the same as well, but Microsoft really has been doing this for a long time. They've got it down to quite a fine art. So it gives you an idea of the interface. You can draw things on there. For instance, we can take this, take a pen and then draw something on the screen. We're not going to draw it on there. We'll draw it like on the background of the screen. So I've got this little pen here. So I'm going to start drawing. Let's go. What are we going to draw? Where are we going to draw it? Not letting me draw, but I can take out. I'm still editing it. So it's definitely doing the right thing. Not giving us much of a chance to draw on. Maybe we can draw on anything. No, it's not letting us draw on anything. It's there we go. Now I can draw. For some reason, that's the eraser. That's why it wouldn't draw. It's supposed to wipe things out. There we go. Highlighter. I'm just highlight that word there. You can have a highlighter that sort of roughly highlights thing almost in like a shareable collaborative board, if you like. Let's go backwards. I don't want that anymore. The design style, again, we saw that there's some ideas for doing designs. You can change backgrounds. You can fill the background solid. The designer is where our background was. So for instance, with this slide now, we take design ideas. It'll bear in mind what you've got here. So it's not going to try, it's just decided it's not going to do it for us. But usually what we'll do is generate those design ideas. No, it wants a new slide. So it's already done with this. It doesn't want to play with this one. This is one of the difference between the desktop version of it and the version of it that runs on this free version. It's already locked this in. Transitions are then what we're going to do between this slide and this next slide. So what we want to do is basically highlight both of these. So you usually do that by holding a shift key, and then we can go morph. So what it's going to do as it goes from one to the next in the slideshow, it's going to morph from that one to that one. So let's see what that looks like. Let's go from the current slide and see how it morphed. So it's done a gentle sort of slideshow transition. I can then change that into something else. If I want to go from introduction to primary goals, I can do a transition that is maybe a push. So it's going to come up from the bottom. So let's have a look what that looks like from the beginning. So this is not doing anything, not really doing anything, but now we get that slide up. See, it's a bit nicer like that. We have the slide up. It's a nicer transition. It's not giving us a lot of transitions for individual elements. That comes in the desktop version of PowerPoint, where you can do a bit more of that. Now, I've had a bit of a look at that one. Now let's look at sorry, got the stuff coming up from Zoom, the Google Slides. Really similar interface, notice. You've got a bunch of different galleries here. You can look at the template gallery and look at the different styles of presentations they've got. Some of them just as nice, if not nicer than the ones from Microsoft. So let's just say we're looking at not a recipe book, but maybe not a photo album, but maybe some a consulting proposal is a good idea. So we'll bring this one up, and it's going to give us a ready to use template for our consulting company. So we go through those slides on the left, much the same as we do on PowerPoint. We move down, we can see all the things that we can now update. You can also take a lot of those rules, change those just the same way we change anything on the last one. So for instance, table of contents, I don't need that many contents. I'm going to take out a whole bunch of them because I don't need them. So to select multiple things, you sort of just draw a circle around them and you find them. So I'm going to take these 4 and I'm going to make them bigger. So up here, we've got our fonts. If you can read that, I might need to make it a little bit bigger for you to be able to see. That's better. And we'll take that from 13 to 32. And then they're sort of overlapping on each other. So I just need to change that so that it looks a little bit neater and tidier. Overview, that one, make that bigger. All these words just don't want to look right. So there you go. I've got them all laid out right. I might want to then just force them a bit further apart. So let's just pull this one down. So they grab it and drag it down a bit. So you've got to grab the edge of it like you do in PowerPoint. Almost the same kind of movements, really. Just pull that whole thing down a bit. This one the same. I'm going to grab it on the edge, pull it down a bit, give a bit more space and drag it down a bit. So you've got a bit of a way of laying those things out. So again, this is very, very similar to PowerPoint, but a few less things you can do. For instance, those design options are not something that comes up, but I can change things like the background. So I change the background from green to black. I can do that. There you go. It's changed, but I can also then change that throughout the rest of the theme. So I want to have that black background in the theme. It now gives a black background to all these slides. So I may need to go and correct some things, like for instance, these little words, number one, which need to be bigger. I'm probably not going to make them 32 because they're not going to fit on the screen. So let's just make them 20. And then we need to make them more readable by making them white. So I'm going to select them all and then change that to white. So then they're much more readable and much more able to be worked with. Same thing, you can change backgrounds, and this the background could be an image, so I can choose an image. They've got an image library. You can upload an image. You can take an image of yourself on your webcam. Let's just look at photos that you've got, or Google Images or Google Drive, any of those things. You can take some photos of yourself and insert it in just like that. And now I can say that's not going to go on the theme. It's just going to go on the background of this particular page. Because when you load up those photos, it gives you a chance to add a little bit of your own color and a bit of spice to it also. It's a little bit easier for you to play with. Your inserting is the same. You can insert images. So insert something by camera, by your drive. You can upload it from the computer. So if I want to take that same channel 10 image I took before, and insert it in. There it is, and it inserts into my proposal the way I want it to. So move around, make it a little bit bigger if I want to. There we go. And off we go. We've got then a little bit more of our own flavor into it. The insert also is for things that audio and video can be inserted. So you can insert an MP4 a video or a YouTube video. You can insert audio that you've created in an MP3 format or a WAV format. And if I wanted to insert something extra like a chart or a diagram, you've got all these options too. Now, this is the same as in Microsoft PowerPoint. You can still insert all the same kind of stuff in there. But remember that just because this template is giving you certain ways of writing, you still got to follow those rules that you learned from earlier, which was showing you how to do things in a much more client-centric way. These are not necessarily layouts that are done to best suit a client. They're just layouts that are done to deliver a particular kind of design aesthetic. So you got to make sure that you're doing the right thing by your clients, not just by whatever Google or PowerPoint or all that want to give you. So that's a little bit of a look at our friends at Google Slides. The last one I want to let you look at is Canva. So Canva, if you've not used it before, you're one of the 3 people in Australia who seems to have not used it. It's a way for you to make some really, really beautiful images, graphics. As you see, I've done lots. I've got thousands. I think I've got to my 3,000 designs by now. Got my little certificate the other day, which said, congratulations. Now they've got things like docs. So you can design documents. You have a shareable whiteboard where you consult with other people and they all put your ideas together with you. A4 documents, Instagram stories, Facebook posts, Facebook cover images, or presentations. I start up at the top right here, create a design, and I select presentation 16 to 9. And it gives me then a blank layout of the first page of my presentation. And then it'll deliver each slide along the bottom here. Over on the left, though, you'll see that it's giving me a lot of different options of different kinds of presentation templates that I can use. So let's just say, for instance, I wanted to do a sales report. And I type in sales report, and it gives me then a bunch of templates that suit sales report. So I'm going to use this one here, for example. Now, what you've got to watch out for in the free version is ones that don't have a little crown on them. The Pro has a little crown on it. So if you can see that there, I might need to go in a little tighter. You go and there's little Pro crowns in there. So go back one. My apologies. So you can see that there. If I click on there's a little crown there. And that crown means that one's only available to Pro. So this one here is completely free. So I'm going to insert that one in. And it's going to give me then a selection of page templates for each page of my report. But it also wants to, it's thinking ahead and going, what kind of pages would you need in a sales report? First page, let's go plus and do a second page. Let's have a look at how these pages lay out. And you can also see how much more attractive these pages are. Like that's one thing that Canva really, really nails when it comes to the presentation style is the design. They've got some amazing designers on staff, and there's literally thousands of these templates. It's not just one or two, there's thousands. So my sales report, I can go in here for December 2022. Remember my rule of having nothing below 30. So I'm going to make that 32. I might want to sort of make this a little less cluttered. I'll take out some of these elements like that. I don't need that. Don't need that either. Don't need these. It's getting me down now to closer to my 3 elements only. I don't need that little orb. So I've got my text, this orb, and a picture. I'm down to 3 elements. It makes it a lot more clear. And you can then add in other elements if you like, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. In this second one, they've got a chart here. Now, once I clicked on this, see how it's got like a little layout for that chart? It's going to let me be able to enter the data in the fields of that. So for example, if I wanted to change item 1, it's currently at 12, when I make it 21, and it's going to change the chart, lifts it up slightly. Item 2 is 12, I'm going to make that 34. So it's going to change the chart a little bit more again. So it automatically updates that chart. Again, I can take out some of this extraneous stuff that isn't really needed. And then it makes it a much more simple page, right? Make that a bit bigger, up to 32. And then dragging things around, much the same as the other tools, just you draw a line around the things you want to update, drag them into place. And notice how it gives you that guideline that says you're now centered. Same thing if I brought it to the center of the absolute page, it'll give me the guideline of exactly where the center of the page is. It also gives me these bleed areas. So it takes me to the side here and says, look, if you're going to put things over on the edge, it'll be out of what's called a safe zone. And the safe zone is everything that's within this area here. So you notice that everything they usually do on these sits within the safe zone. So the safe zone allows you, and we just wiggle that again, you can see that safe zone. Make sure that you're within the most likely area that screens will be able to display your presentation. So you're not really stuck then with the inability to see stuff that's sort of squished on the edge and you're missing out on words. Television uses the same thing. When you make a television ad or a television show, the subject of everything has to be within that safe zone so it doesn't bleed over the edges and cause a bad viewing experience. We've got another one of these charts here you can click on. Again, I'm going to declutter this. It's a very cluttered space of unnecessary stuff to make it a little easier to read. I can also change colors. Now, if I go, this purple, I'm not happy with that purple. I want it to be something else. I click on the color here. Notice how it's showing purple because I've selected it. I take that purple and I'm now going to change it to black. Now, what it's done for me down the bottom is said, do you want to change everything that's purple to black on this document? I'm like, actually, yeah, I do. I want to change it right throughout. And what that's done now is changed all the areas where that purple showed up to in black now. Notice how instead of shades of purple, this is now shades of black. So I've got a very different looking, but cohesive report that's all put together in Canva. So a lot of this has got there. Now I can remove any of these graphics I want to remove and put in some of my own. For instance, I want to upload a logo. So the logo I wanted to upload was from, let's just say from HubSpot. It's something I was doing something on. I've uploaded that from the internet. I can then change what that looks like, move it around. There we go, put that there. Might need, the MailerLite one as well, because it's from a presentation I was doing last week. So I can add those in or just, upload the files from my desktop where they were. So once that's done, I like what I'm doing. I can test it out to present with. Now to present with, I just present and it says, yeah, you're ready to go, present. And now that becomes presentable as full screen. And you'll see that on your screen as well. That's showing as a full screen one. Hit escape on my keyboard and we're back again. One of the things that will be a bit different is that because this is not just a presentation piece of software, it's a graphic design software. I can then go to any one of these and go, let's say a new one, I'm going to put in a photo of something. Let's say it's a photo that I've already uploaded. Let's find one that's not too, this one of Graham Norton. Something I was doing for Channel 10 last week. So I can look at that photo and go, I want to change something about that photo. So I can go here to edit image at the top and then change some aspects about that. I can make it darker, make it brighter, probably there, contrast up and down. But there's lots of other options for see all of ways to present this photo. A vignette means darker around the edges, that highlights it a bit. I can make the vibrance a little bit stronger. So it's taking a little bit of these wrinkles out, the old fella. And that way we've got some ideas in there that we can create. Now I can then put a bit of text over the top of that. Let's just say I want to use one of these presets down here, or I can use my kit. So I want to go, this is Graham Norton. Make it a little bit bigger if I want to, up to 72, bold, and then maybe make it white in the color and maybe a italic. I can also then add effects to all of these. This is a bit of advanced Canva stuff. You don't really need to know all this, but for instance, I want a neon glow around it, or wanted to have like a glitchy kind of lift on it, or I wanted to make it hollow, I can make it hollow as well. So that looks kind of cool. So that way you've got a lot of different ways to present how you're going to have this on screen. And then I can throw in a logo on top of that as well. Let's see if there's a logo I can find that I can use. Cool, ice cream. I like ice cream. So we can throw in all sorts of stuff to make those presentation screens look a little bit brighter. But the main idea is here is that you don't just get to, you know how I was showing you how to do the transitions before on PowerPoint from one to the other. I can do transitions, sure. I can put in a transition between one and the other, add a transition, and I can go, I want to dissolve it. So I want that whole screen to come on in the dissolve. So when I just, let me just quickly get rid of that. I don't need that. delete, go here. I'm going to try and show you this dissolve. So I'm going to present this page, and then what you'll see is the second page as it comes on will come in an animated fashion. So it automatically animates those graphs, so they look pretty when they come on. But I can also make these words come in and animate as well. So by clicking animate, I want them to wipe in, so it looks kind of like that. And I want this one to animate as well. I'm going to make it tumble on in. So let's see what that looks like when I present it. Done, done, and let's open that page. There you go. So it's a lot easy. Just select the things you want to animate and animate them, where it's a little bit more involved to do that on those other tools. It's they were not made to be graphic tools. This definitely is. The presentation tool in Canva is absolutely superior, I think, to all the others that are really available out there on the market. So you've had a really good look at the rules of all this as a takeaway, the rules which come with being able to do an effective presentation for people who want to be able to read what you've got on screen and to get your message across in the clearest way possible. Now you've got these systems as well, and how you can use those systems, bearing in mind that Canva starts free, and then there's options in there to get a monthly subscription, which is about $17 a month. The amount of time that I use this a day, it's definitely worth it for me. It's a core product that I use. But if you really want to go super free, a Gmail account or a Google account gets you Google Sheets for free, Google Slides for free, sorry. And then you can use the Microsoft, if you've got an Outlook.com account or a Hotmail account, you also get access to the free version of Microsoft 365, which includes PowerPoint in it as well. So that's as far as we need to go with all that. If you'd like to learn more about it, and you've got some of those that time with the digital solutions program up your sleeve, we've got 3 one-hour coaching sessions available for those who are interested in working out how to get more out of presentations. You also get access to 4 or more hours of workshops and webinars like this one, all for just $44. So if you'd like to know more about that, digitalsolutions.businessstation.com.au is the address for you. Just take a screenshot of that one, or take a photo, or just search Business Station online on Google. And finally, if you want to get in touch with me, my email address, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram and Twitter, all over the place. Please feel free to reach out to me on any of those channels, and I'd love to answer any questions you have about making better presentations. For now, though, thank you so much for taking some time out of your work to, I guess, learn a bit more about how you can promote your business by using great presentations. I'm Dante St. James. Have a great day.